It's time for the Phil Ferguson Show.
Well, hello there. This is Phil Ferguson, and you are listening to the cleverly titled The Phil Ferguson Show. This is the year in review episode, and in a few minutes, we'll have the year in review segment. Warning, there's a lot of math. There's a lot of math and a lot of numbers, and if you are operating heavy machinery or you're driving on the interstate, you may want to listen to this show at a different point in time. Of course, you could always listen to it and then re-listen to it where you can take notes or at least focus on the numbers. I don't know how else to do it. It's a lot of fucking numbers. And I remember the first couple of times I did shows with a lot of numbers, I was terrified because it's a lot of numbers. And a lot of shows don't do stuff like what I do. But after the first time or two that I did it, the email response that I got was profoundly, overwhelmingly positive, in part because nobody else does what I do. I'm not aware of anyone at all who goes into some of the details of things like the year-end numbers that I'm going to do in the upcoming segment, or talking about the math behind things like annuities and other crazy wink, wink investments, air quote investments, that just separate you from your money. So people seem to like that. And, let me know. Should I have kept it more simple? Should I have expounded even more? I don't know, but listen to it. Take notes. If I just confuse the fuck out of you, give me an email. Send me an email, phil@polarisfinancialplanning.com. And maybe I can clear up something, because I sometimes make mistakes and say the wrong fund name or the wrong dollar amount or the wrong percentage change. It can happen. One fun, family-friendly event thing that I'm going to add in. I'm going to add two of them. One, my pool. I don't know, just update, keep you informed in the pool at the Florida house. I had been away for 2 weeks, and I think I talked about this in the last episode. And so I left it uncovered so the pool cleaner guy could clean it. Well, he didn't do his fucking job. He lied. He filled out the form and told his bosses and put the little tag on my door that said he did these like 12 steps to maintain my pool. Didn't fucking do it. I was pissed. My wife took, I think I even mentioned this, my wife took a sample to the store. They measured it and they're like, oh my God, these numbers are all way off. It looks like you need a pool cleaning service. Yeah, it looks like I do. She then informed them that they are the pool cleaning service, and we keep telling them that the guy is lying. I have it on film. It's on video, stored on servers of the person being here for 6 minutes to do a job that probably should be 30 to 60 minutes, depending on the condition of the pool. So anyway, one of the things I've got to do soon is go fire that company. But my wife and I put in all the chemicals. When we got here, the pool was 64 degrees. Nobody wants that. I got the new pool cover, and I got a new big giant cranky machine to pull off the entire pool cover. And in the last week, approximately 6 days, the pool temperature went from 64 to around 80, 81. I got tricked by the meter, by the pump that said the pool was 84. I went in the pool yesterday. It was not 84. The little floaty thermometer was around 80, 81 degrees. So still was a little on the cool side, especially when it's kind of cool outside and windy. But that was in 6 days. Today and tomorrow look like rain. But then after that, we're supposed to have 2 big, beautiful sunny days. And also had some interesting kind of aggressive discussions from people on Facebook My understanding is that the pool cover, at least, and most importantly, this time of the year, near the winter solstice, the pool cover does not actually heat up the pool. Ironically, I got a blue, dark blue, slightly black pool cover. I would have been better off with a clear pool cover. And of course, then people want to explain to me that black absorbs more solar radiation than blue or white would. Yeah, thanks. I didn't fucking know that. It's not like my original undergraduate degree wasn't physics. So don't explain electromagnetic spectrum to me, please. Don't. But what you're failing to take into account is that water, while not blue or black, could have the ability to absorb more energy from the sun than just similar colored pieces of plastic. So a clear cover actually allows more sunlight through into the water, and the water absorbs it. But for me, especially in the winter, it's not about that, although I think the clear one would have worked a little bit better. It's about preventing evaporation. The evaporation cools down the pool, and you heat the pool up during the day because I have solar panels, and then it evaporates during the day, and then it evaporates overnight, and you wake up in the morning and it's 1 or 2 degrees cooler than the day before, at least as the temperatures are falling. Now I've reversed that with simply putting on plastic pool cover with cute little bubbles in it, and the temperature, like I said, went from 64, let's say conservatively, to 80 in 6 days. And I am optimistic that if I continue to do this, I'm going to be in the mid 80s 4, 5, 6 days from now. And maybe I can keep that over the entire winter, which I think would be cool as fuck to have a pool year round. And all I've got to do is use the solar passive heating system that's already been installed in the house, and by putting on and then pulling off this cover, which is now, with the big roller cranky thing, really easy to do. So there's that. The other quick reminder, on January 15th, I will be speaking in the Orlando area for the Central Florida Free Thought Community, January 15th at 2 p.m. at the University Club. You can Google all of that information to get the exact details and the address. You could send me an email, Phil@Polaris Financial Planning. Again, that is January 15th. I will be giving a slightly updated and live version of what I had on the show last episode, which was the holiday season lame episode where I just put up the audio from a talk I gave a decade ago. Called Breaking the Cycle, How to Get Kids Out of Religion. Oh, by the way, some people sent me very nice emails. I would like to know what I could do to improve the talk, change the talk. If you liked it, if you hated it, if you think I'm an asshole, whatever. Be nice. A little bit nice. And I'm going to wrap up this introductory segment. We're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to hear all the maths about 2022 and what went well and what did not.
This is atheism in a nutshell. You say, there's a God. I say, can you prove that? You say no. I say, I don't believe you then. Mm-hmm. So, you believe in one God, I assume?
In 3 persons, but go ahead.
Okay, so you believe... Okay. Mm-hmm. So, but there are about 3,000 to choose from that have been, people who believe in...
I've done some reading, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So basically, you deny one less God than I do. You don't believe in 2,999 gods, and I don't believe in just one more.
Right.
You're listening to The Phil Ferguson Show.
The Phil Ferguson Show is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Nothing said on the show should be interpreted as personalized investment advice. Investments should be based on your personal situation, and you, of course, should consult with your financial advisor or tax professional before taking any actions.
This is the calendar year 2022 in review in reference to how different parts of the market worked or did, or performed, however you want to call it. This is for the United States. This is for U.S. stocks, U.S. bonds, and international funds bought from mostly Vanguard in U.S. dollars. So if you look at these numbers from another country, you could find something very different, and that could be the correct numbers for you. So just keep all of that in mind. Also has a couple of caveats and disclosure kind of things. These are not the numbers that any individual person actually achieved. All of this is for discussion purposes only. This is not a personal position report for anybody. Past performance is for reference only and does not indicate future results. Allocations in this are assumed to be constant during the calendar year, which is unrealistic. It is assumed that all dividends are reinvested back into the funds that they came from, which is unrealistic because I generally don't do that. God, what else should I tell you? This assumes that no money was added or removed during the calendar year. It does not account for any payments made to Phil. It does not account for any taxes. It does not account for any transaction costs. Whew. I think that's it. The thing that I really want to sink in is that we're just having a conversation about how things went in general. And if you are not specifically following my plan, or if you're trying to specifically follow my plan, you can look at your results and see, are they in the ballpark? Are they even close to what I'm saying these numbers are? And if you're way off, why? And you could have done a lot better. You could have done a lot worse. If you've done a lot better, that's awesome. But if you're trying to follow the plan and you got very different results, somehow you're not following the plan. Which, okay, if it worked out better for you this year, that's great. But I have a plan for a reason. If you've done materially worse than the plan, again, I think you'd really want to find out why in the fuck that happened, and is that something that's fixable? One thing to keep in mind is that virtually, leaving myself a little wiggle room, virtually every fund that I use is a Vanguard index fund. So if you are not using index funds, or if you are not using Vanguard index funds, you may get slightly different results. Okay, so I think that's it. So I am going to review individual index funds. I'm going to look at groups of index funds together and give some numbers that way. And then I'm going to look at a total portfolio. Two different things that I will consider is a portfolio that's 100% stocks, no bonds, which means you're probably 12 to 15 years or more from retirement. And then the other portfolio I will give is one that's fully prepared and the cushion is fully filled as if you are in retirement or really close to retirement. So if you're somewhere in between those two different positions, just keep that in mind. You might have to make an adjustment. One of the things that I want to start with is cash, which used to pay 0, now pays something like 1%, 2% to 4%, depending on exactly what it's invested in. So cash, ironically, for calendar year 2022, might have been your best performer. So for those, it's important in the long run to keep cash small. Now, some people will over apply what I'm talking about, and they want cash to be 0, 0, 0 all the time. No problem with that. Just keep in mind that that requires more work on your part, more work on my part if you're a client, and it's not always the best thing to have. Generally speaking, I like to keep cash under a cap of 2% unless there's a reason for it to be different. And example, if you're in retirement, the rules are totally different from my perspective of how much money you want to have on hand. And this 2% thing doesn't make any sense. But for most people that are building their portfolio and retirement is years away, I want to keep cash under 2%. Often when I buy things, the cash will go really close to zero, and then it might drift up over a few months before something else is bought again, or there's a rebalance. So on average, I think most people that aren't taking out any funds, the cash on hand is going to be give or take around 1%. Again, there's exceptions and caveats for all of that. So in this theoretical example, I have it as 0.9%. So just so you know. I'm going to move to bonds now. Now, bonds is very interesting, and it's one of those things that I've talked about in the past, and I'm sure I will cover again in the future. Let me know if there's some particular part of bonds that you wish me to discuss more than another part, and we can do that. I often talk to people, and the common perception from the public is that bonds are safer and bonds are easier than stock. Bonds can be a whole lot safer than stock, but they can be riskier and more volatile than stock. And the one thing I am definitely comfortable with saying is that they are wickedly more complicated than stocks. So with stocks, you can have growth stocks, value stocks, but they're all stocks. Now you can have preferred stocks, which are different. That's a whole nother animal. But that's, kind of the gist of it. There's some other weird things that are around the edges, but mostly stocks are stocks. Bonds, you can get simple bonds too, but you can get very, very complicated very, very quickly. And you can have taxed bonds, non-taxed bonds. You can have bonds that the dividends might be qualified for taxable gains tax rates, even though you would think that that only applies to taxable gains. It might apply to some or all of the dividends. You can have bonds that are callable. You can have bonds that are redeemable. You can have bonds that have changing interest rates. You can have bonds that are tied to all kinds of different things. You can have all kinds of different risks. You can talk to a broker dealer who can help you buy bonds as the broker or as the dealer. Another one of those tricky things where if they are acting as the broker, they will charge you a fee to help facilitate the transaction of you going and buying a bond or bond fund. If they are the dealer, particularly if they are the dealer of a specific bond issue, they can assist you in buying that bond from their inventory. There is an inherent potential for conflict of interest in a situation like this. And I think, generally speaking, unless you consider yourself to be very savvy in buying individual bonds, you should avoid this situation. For most people, I recommend do not buy any individual bonds whatsoever on your own. You're just asking for trouble. And if interest rates are really low, like they were in the past, if you're paying 5, 6, 8% commission or some kind of spread or margin to the dealer to get those bonds, it could be years before you even have a chance of breaking even. And you would have been way better in cash or in a CD at your local bank. Bond funds, bond index funds are a fantastic thing because the people that are doing the buying and the selling know what they're doing in a very, very complicated thing that you would think isn't complicated. All right, focus. Bonds. Let me start with the total bond index fund from Vanguard. I'm not necessarily going to give the symbol for every fund that I talk about, but I might give it for a lot of them. Just be prepared for that. The total bond index fund from Vanguard, which is VBTLX, current yield is around 4.13. Keep in mind, warning, caveat, whatever. The yield can change day to day. So the number I'm giving you is what I pulled a few days ago. So it's around that ballpark. The past performance numbers that I'm giving you are probably all of them from 12/30. That was the last business day of calendar year 2022. And the 3, 5, and 10-year data will all be based on that. There may be possible exceptions where, for example, an Admiral fund didn't exist 5 or 10 years ago, so the data might be for the standard shares, not the Admiral shares. And I might also quote long-term data. And since I try to avoid new funds, often this is for funds that have been in existence 12, 15, 20, 30, or even 40 years. But if I give the long-term numbers, keep in mind they can be wickedly different between a fund that's been in existence 12 years versus one that's been in existence 24 years. So you have to really understand the time frame that you're looking at. So I'm probably going to avoid that, particularly for bonds. Anyway, I digress. Total bond fund current yield 4.13. A year ago, that was probably really close to 1, maybe 1.2. The 1-year performance, past performance, which of course is no guarantee of future results, minus 13.16. So if you took the easy route and just had the total bond index over the last calendar year, you put money at the beginning of the year, you reinvested all dividends, and then you looked at the value at the end of the year, it was down 13.16. So that is a reference point for us to look at. Now, that's horrific. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. This is a loss in bonds that is unprecedented. It may be the single largest 1-year loss across the entire bond market ever experienced. And I would guess maybe even twice, double the worst previous year. I didn't do any research on this, but that number has blown me away. We've talked about that before, and we'll go over some of that again, but that's your reference point. Some other reference points, thankfully for the Polaris plan, I was normally talking about plus or minus 80% of your bonds should be in 3, what I think are very conservative bond funds. Now, there is some flexibility here and some adjustability, and there's a lot of funds at Vanguard that are really close to this specific type of bond fund, and you can also get them at Fidelity and Schwab and T. Rowe Price and many other companies. But as an example, short-term government Admiral shares, VBIRX, it lost 5.54% in calendar year 22, which of course, way better than minus 13, but minus 5.5, way worse than I thought was possible. Maybe 3 or 4% I might have thought was the worst case loss. The losses earlier in the year were actually worse, but they're now being offset by the fact that the yield on this fund has gone from something like 0.6% to it is now 4.4%. Absolutely amazing. A year ago, people would give me calls and say, I have this money. Where can I invest it? What kind of bonds can I use for the next year to make a bunch of money and then spend the cash on something? And I said, just put it in your bank. It doesn't matter. Well, no, I might give you a different answer because you can make 4.4% theoretically on these bonds. Another example is short-term corporate that I use, VFSUX, minus 5.75. And the current yield on that is 4.79, 4.8% approximately. Another fund that I use is the Jenny May fund, VFIJX. Current yield is 3.14, but it is down 10.73. That doesn't mean it'll be down next year, just saying. And to round out the 3 more aggressive funds is the Total International Bond Fund, which is down 13, the Emerging Market Bond Fund, which is down 17.3, and the High Yield, also known as Junk Bond Fund, is down only 9%. That was also something that was down considerably more during the middle of the year, but now we ended up at the year end minus 9%. Current yield on that, by the way, is almost 7%. Absolutely staggering. The result, the combined result of the Polaris plan bond positions, again, nobody actually had this portfolio. This is not actual performance or positions for anybody specifically, just something to talk about. The Polaris plan as used at the beginning of the year and as discussed in August, September, October in great detail is roughly 1 year performance of minus 8.08%. Clearly way worse than I expected, but that's what it is. Minus 8.08%. The current yield on a portfolio like this is 4.25%. And as I said a minute ago, last year, your mix, depending on what you had, could be 1.25 to 1.5. But, things changed. They changed pretty freaking dramatically. Spring, March, April, May kind of thing, when the Fed really started tweaking the interest rates, the overnight Fed funds rate up. And the response from the market was swift and dramatic, and bonds adjusted almost 100% within a few months to what the theoretical adjustment in bond rates would be in a year or two in the future. So by being very conservative in this instance, instead of losing 13%, the plan lost about 8%. I'm real happy. I've talked about this before. I am over the moon happy to beat the total bond market index by 8% in 1 year. Absolutely, profoundly staggering. I cannot believe it, but yay for us. Keep this in mind the next time I give you a report or a review of something that didn't do quite so well, because not everything I suggest is a good idea or turns out to be a good idea. But that's the goal, is to be right more often than not. And one of the things that helps is understanding what the forces are that affect things like bonds. One of the things that I talked about and I specifically avoided, and I specifically warned other people to avoid it, was long duration bonds, even intermediate. So short-term bonds are usually 2 to 5, maybe 6 years. Is the average to maturity, or the really magical numbers duration. Intermediate, of course, is 5 to 6 years up to maybe 8 or 10, and long-term can be 10, 15, 18, or even 20 years. As a reference, the Vanguard Intermediate Corporate Bond Fund, VICSX, was down almost 18%. The Vanguard Long-Term, let's see, I'm just going to pick, which one is this? Long-Term Government Bond Fund, long-term, down 29.5%. So if you had a generous portion of your bond portfolio and things that went down 13, 15, 17, 30%, your performance was not going to be as good. I've gone over a lot of the justifications for why that happened in recent shows, so I'm not going to belabor the point here. But in summary, in bonds, we lost 8% using the Polaris plan versus the market for the bonds losing 13.16. Okay, wrapping up bonds. The next one, really fun. This is one I can spend way too much time on, so I'm going to try to keep it short, is the U.S. stock market. And generally speaking, for U.S. stock investments, I use 6 funds. There's a 7th, and I'll get to it in a second here. But the bulk of the money is in 6 Vanguard incredibly low-cost index funds. It's large cap growth and value, mid cap growth and value, small cap growth and value. And again, based on the allocations that I was using January 1st of 2022, talked about during the year, specifically detailed in late summer of 2022. And so far, as you know, as a listener only, these are the allocations that I'm currently using. I have changed my model a little bit, and I've been rolling that out to all of the Polaris clients, because there's some things that I do hold back that they get because they're paying me. And so I've been working through that, and I want to try to have virtually every client adjusted where possible before I talk about that on the show. And so I'll probably be revealing that information February. I'm hoping mid-February, early February, but it just depends on when I get done what I think I need to do for adjusting everybody else. So I'm going to talk about what I used for the bulk of 22, assume it for the entire year of 22. And again, that was detailed in the 6-part episode, July, August, September, something like that, the Polaris Plan, part 1 through 6. And that is as follows. The United States stock market, I divided up in 6 segments. Large cap growth, 20%. Large cap value, 30%. Mid cap growth, 10%. Mid cap value, 15%. Small cap growth and value, also 10 and 15%. If you want all the specific IDs, go back and listen to those shows. But the thing that was amazing is we had an overweighting of money into value versus growth. And that was in part because of the multi-year performance of growth crushing value. And so I follow a little bit of a contrarian philosophy. And if there's one of the segments of the 6, or even 3 of the segments of the 6, as in this case, that don't do as well, I want to put more money there. Where a lot of people and a lot of advisors chase the gains. You can call it momentum investing, where you invest in what's hot, and there's a long history of whatever has done well will continue to do well. The problem is that continues until it doesn't. And then the adjustment can be swift and it can be brutal. Before I get into that, let me give you the total stock market. According to the Vanguard Index Fund, total stock market VTSAX for 1 year ending 12/30 of 2022 was minus 19.53. Just an FYI, the S&P 500, which is the large cap portion of the total stock market, of course, did a little bit better, losing 18.15%. That number might change a tenth, or probably not even a tenth, 100th or 2, and I'll adjust if necessary. But right now it's minus 18.15. Caution, warning. All of these things, if you look up this symbol on a website that gives you graphs and charts and tables of performance, there is a distinct possibility that you will get a different result. As an example, if you look up the S&P 500 index fund from Vanguard, VFIAX, you might see that the number is not minus 18.15, but minus 19.4, minus 19.44, something like that. It is very important for you to know the number that you're looking at. Does it account for dividends or does it not account for dividends? Which, of course, if you're doing the math in your head, are about 1.3, 1.4%, depending on exactly how you calculate it. So it's one of those things. I've seen news stories where they say the S&P 500 is down almost 20%. Well, it was down minus 18.15. Is minus 18.15 almost 20? Yeah, it's in the ballpark. But were they trying to spin it? Why didn't they say down almost 15% or down only 18%? I don't know. You know, they're going to pick the way that they want to phrase it. Maybe 20% is a nice round number. But the actual loss is minus 18.15. The number that I will be trying to compare all the stocks going forward, at least the U.S. stocks going forward to, is the total stock market index, because I do not use just large cap stocks. There's reasons for that too, but so the number to compare, the number to beat is minus 19.5. When I break down some of the details, as an example, U.S. large cap growth, VIGAX, minus 33.14. Large cap value, VVIAX, minus 2.08. Abso-fucking-lutely incredible. I think that is the largest variance of that kind that I have seen in the 25 years that I've been doing this. And again, this worked in our favor to a degree that I can't imagine, I can't hardly fathom, because of the fact that I'm using 40% growth and 60% value, not 50-50. 40% growth, 60% value. So 40% of the money was in the fund that lost, 40% of the large cap money was in the fund that lost 33%, but 60% of the large cap value, or the large cap money, was in the value fund that lost 2%. I think losing 2% is way the fuck better than losing 33, and I'm sure you will agree. What has caused a lot of heartburn and problems is that I will get emails. I'll get the emails about this definitely, but take a look at this before you email me. And you can still email me even if this is true. But during the year, I had people contact me and said, "Hey, Phil, you're talking about the S&P 500 or the total stock market being down 15, 20, 25%, but I'm down 40, 45%. I was like, well, how in the hell is that possible? And we found out. It is very, very common for the average advisor to recommend mutual funds that are performing very well. It makes sense. I don't want to recommend to a customer a fund that lost money last year when everybody else made money. I don't want to recommend a fund that made only 10% when the large cap growth is up 20%. And I don't know if they don't understand what they're doing, or if they don't want to mess with the hassle of trying to explain to you that you need to have money in all the different parts of the market, which is one of the nice things about the plan, is it forces this to happen. But if you have an advisor that's new, only been that's a couple years, or getting paid commissions, or doesn't want to explain to you the hard facts of reality, they're going to put you in a handful of funds, maybe 5 or 6 different mutual funds. And let's say they use 6 domestic funds, just like I'm using 6 domestic funds, at least for a larger portfolio. Then they put you in a fund that's called growth. They put you one that's aggressive growth and super aggressive growth, and a growth in value and conservative growth, or conservative value, dividend appreciation, something like that. They all have different names. All of those names are marketing bullshit. They don't have any meaning at all in the investment world, or by law, or by regulation, or by IRS, or nothing. It's marketing. It's purely a marketing gimmick. And when someone tells me, when I say the large cap growth is down 33%, and someone that has a U.S. only stock market portfolio of managed mutual funds, and they contact me and they say, "Hey, Phil, I'm down 40, 45%, but I've got these 6 totally different funds. How did you come up with the idea they're totally different?" Well, one's called growth, and one's aggressive growth, and one's value. Okay, that's meaningless. What you have to do, and you can do this at Morningstar.com. I should be paid by them, but it's a great website. You can pay extra for pro features, but for almost everybody, all the stuff that you're going to want to do, you can get for free. Morningstar.com. You put in the 5-digit letter combination for your mutual fund, and you can get the results just like I'm talking about here. But you can also look at what are the holdings, particularly in stock mutual funds. It's really handy. And you can look at these different funds that you have. And I've done this over and over and over and over and over again. And you look at these funds that are supposed to be different, and they all hold Microsoft and Apple and Netflix and Tesla and Twitter. Well, not Twitter anymore. Thank you, Elon, for giving us cash and tanking Twitter after we had the money out. I appreciate that very much. But if you're all the funds are, 20, 30, 40, 50% of the money, and all 6 of these different funds is in the same stuff, and the same stuff happened to be all large cap growth, and not just large cap growth, but 10 or 15 or 20 of the most growthy, the most large cappy things that didn't go down 33%, but that went down 30, 40, 50, 60, 70% or more in the last calendar year. it's easy to see that you clearly did not have a diversified fucking portfolio. But that's another episode. So in this case, the end result is, I'm going to compare to the total market performance was minus 19.5. But if you had a portfolio the entire year, adding no money, taking no money out, reinvesting dividends exactly into the funds that they came out of, which is going to be almost true for nobody and is something that I specifically do not do, generally speaking, in the Polaris plan. But anyhow, I'm going to pretend like I did. The result we had was minus 15.5%. So what was that? Minus 15.5 versus 19.5. This is, again, something that I would have never predicted. I would have never expected. And quite honestly, for a couple of years, the Polaris plan had underperformed the S&P 500 1% or 2%. Just to be fair, I'm going to throw that out there. It's a fact because I wasn't investing a large part of the money in the things that were hot. So there was a little bit of this idea that we were missing out. But I'm perfectly comfortable to miss out sometimes if it means I don't lose as much other times. One of the things I like to say is one of the best ways to make money in the long run is to not lose money in the short run. But then again, I completely ride the market down when it falls because I also don't believe in market timing. But I do market-based adjustments. It's a semantics thing, maybe, but I don't make adjustments intraday. I don't make them at the end of the day or the end of the week or sometimes even at the end of the month. And there have been times where I've not done a change to the plan or the allocations within the plan, sometimes for years, year after year after year. And then sometimes like this last year or two, I think it's been maybe in the last 3 years, 2 or 3 tweaks and one new one that I hope to review in February for you. So that's the summary for the U.S. portion. While the total market was down 19.5, the Polaris plan was down 15.5. Again, doesn't always happen that way, but I'm very happy. The one other U.S. stock fund that I have is the REIT fund, and maybe I don't have a good justification in this because it is partially, not 100%, but partially redundant because a lot of the stocks that are owned in the REIT fund are in the 6 previous discussed funds. But the REIT fund also from Vanguard has the capacity to buy REITs directly, like you could get in a private placement REIT, but you're not getting fucked because we're under the impression that they know what they're doing and they're buying really efficient investments and properties and buildings. And so it's a way to diversify into real estate directly, at least in some small measure. That has done poorly, minus 26.2. So definitely this year, a drag on our otherwise lovely performance. And I have that as 6% of the U.S., 6% of all stocks, 6% of all stocks. So it's a bit of a buzzkill. Thankfully, it was metered in control a small amount. And sometimes that does better than the stock market. Sometimes it does worse. And so here we are. Last big segment, big category, international. Just a quick reference. The total international is minus 16%. And the group of funds that I used are minus 18. Wow. So I lost there. It didn't work out as well. And that is primarily because of the way I've broken down investments into growth and value, Pacific and Europe, small cap and emerging markets. The small cap has done poorly, and even the large cap growth has done poorly, but large cap value, not surprisingly, did really well. But all of it blends together in a way where that the total international, just like the total stock market or the S&P 500 index, is very weighted towards large cap. So during some of the weirdness and strangeness of the last year, large caps internationally did better than small caps and emerging markets. Very common, reasonable expectations. So the total international is down 16, but a blend that puts a little bit more money in other places that is not all large cap like I used, minus 18.7, just to be fair. It's minus 2.7%. It's a smaller part of the portfolio. The funny thing is that the minus 18.7 still did beat the total stock market in the U.S. of minus 19.53. So even the underperformance of international compared to the total international, I'll give myself a little slack because the total international fund is weighted towards large cap. And so it's done well in large cap. But anyway, so if we run that all together, if you are, let's see, where is this number calculating from? If you are only in stocks, portfolio, the way I've laid it out a few months ago, the Polaris plan for 2022, generally speaking, your performance is minus 17.13, where the total U.S. stock market is minus 19.5. So the big drags were the REITs and growth, international growth, and international emerging markets and international small company stocks. Didn't help our cause, but we outperformed by 2.5% compared to just the U.S. total stock market. Very happy about that. And of course, even before you learn about any plan adjustment I may have made, you can of course do your annual adjustment to your portfolio, your annual rebalancing. As an example, if you just look at large cap growth and value, and let's say you had $100,000 between the two funds, if you had 40%, $40,000 in large cap growth and 60% in large cap value at the beginning of the year, now at the end of the year, the 60% or the 60,000 in value is down 2%. So let's call it 2 points. It went from 60 to 58. But the large cap growth went from 40 and it lost a third. So what is that? 13? Yeah, 3. So it lost 13,000. So it fell from 40 to 27. So now you have 27 and 58,000, not 40 and 60. You are already out of whack, and you should give serious consideration to rebalancing your portfolio if you have not done so in the last 6 months or so. It may be a whole year since you've done it. It may be longer. This is also one of the perks, I think, of something like the Polaris plan where you can go do this. If you have, like the previous example I talked about, where you have 6 different funds that have wickedly different titles, but they all hold the same shit and they all sucked, how can you rebalance? What do you rebalance with, into? That you've lost that trick, that opportunity, that strategy, that I don't know what to call it, but you've lost that. So you can't rebalance because you have nothing to rebalance into, and now mentally you're stuck because you're like, well, do I sell this now that I've lost 40%, or do I stay and wait for it to come back up? I don't know the answer because that's not what I do. But if you had all these investments and you included the bonds that lost 8%, you could have a very long-term portfolio in retirement that's down 13.5%. So not great, but considering the U.S. total stock market was down 19.5, losing 13.5, you're ahead by 6% because you are broadly diversified. It is even more important that not only were you diversified, but we have this category of things that we talk about where you have this granularity and visibility that I was just talking about with the U.S. stock market part. If you are getting low on cash on hand and you're in retirement and you need more cash on hand, generally speaking, when the stock market's down, you would sell some of the bonds. You could sell some of the bonds that are down 5.5, 5.6, 5.75%. And that's the best. You know, they're still down, but that's the best. Do not forget that you have the opportunity to sell from large cap value, VVIAX. Seriously consider this fund because it is down 2.08%. It actually beat bonds, all bonds, every bond that I use. And you could have had a ultra short or a floating rate bond that might have lost something close to 2% or even been slightly positive. Not something I generally use. But large cap value, as of 12/31, measuring one calendar year, that is the entire year of 2022, is down 2%. And you might have this real block in your head saying, well, the market's down, I can't sell stocks. Yes, the fuck you can. If you have the granularity and the visibility to see what you own, and you can see that you're going to do a rebalance, you have too much money in large cap value because it went down 2% and everything else went down more. Well, if you're going to reduce the size of that holding, if you need cash, use that to create cash. So we have a lot of tools at our disposal to try to tweak out a little bit better performance. One is dollar cost averaging, a whole show on its own. Another one, rebalancing. Another possibility is overbalancing. We also have market-based adjustments, which is what I'm going to cover in February with the change in the plan. And you have this granularity and clarity where you can pick and choose. And this is one of the reasons I don't like, why a target date fund might be suboptimal. Because depending on your situation, the target date fund might be the best thing available for you to buy. But if you can do all this stuff, but the thing that I also worry about is doing all this stuff is complicated. It is complicated. It takes some thinking. It takes some doing. You can do it. It's not super hard. You can do it. The kind of person that hires me, usually, thankfully, is someone that has considerable amount of money. My current minimum for new clients is $2 million of assets that can be managed by me. So it does not include your car, does not include your house or property or land or other interesting investments that may be wonderful. I can't adjust them. I can't control them. I can't move them around. It doesn't include anything from your employer, any kind of ERISA plan, 401k, 403b, stuff like that. But if you have $2 million or more, and if this sounds like a reasonable way to look at things and you don't want to do it, because that's the big secret. Every once in a while, someone will send me an email and they say, Phil, I know everything you know. Why would I hire you? Why the fuck would you hire? Why the fuck would you write me this email? That's my question. If you know everything I know, why aren't you helping people out? I guess you could make a podcast and help people because everything on the podcast is free. You didn't pay a goddamn thing. But the people who are clients get more frequent, regular adjustments, conversations. They get advanced updates on plan adjustments than listeners to the show because they're paying me. Sometimes I think about how can I automate this, but if I automate it, then I would be providing basically what you could get from a robot advisor. And why hire me at all? Maybe my robot or model or plan would be better, but I think the extra value comes in the time that I spend sitting down and going over this line by line, item by item with each person and contemplating what is in your IRA, what is in your Roth IRA, what is in your taxable account, how much taxes do we want to create? Is there a clever way where we could create losses? And I had a few clients that we were pretty clever. I'm pretty happy. We were able to do tax loss harvesting in a way that helped them sell some things that were up to rebalance by selling some things that were down that at some point in the future we can put back in once we've gotten past the wash sale date limits, which I'm not going to go into. It's too late now. 22 is over. Maybe later in this year, or if people really want to know more about tax loss harvesting or what were the tricks that I did, those are all fun things that I can really dig into with clients. But you can do it all yourself. But if you don't want to fuck around with all this and keep an eye on it and check it, well, maybe send me an email, phil@polarisfinancialplanning.com. We can talk about it. If we both think it's a good fit, we can talk about it some more. If I can just answer a few questions for you and help you just a little bit, that's cool too. You don't owe me anything. You don't have to hire me. That's fantastic. I love doing that. I love being a little bit of a consumer advocate where I am attempting to help you get better returns. And so here is a case where if you're in retirement and your total portfolio is down 13.46, 13.5% versus being down 19.5 versus being down 20 or 30 or 40%, it's an opportunity for you to be pretty freaking happy. And on top of that, if you do need to create more cash because the dividends during the year weren't enough, VVIAX, the Large Cap Value Fund, and a couple of those really conservative bond funds that are down 5.5%, you have the ability to wait for some of these things to come back up. And you can create cash with very little losses. And so I'm happy by that. I'm made happy by that. And I know clients are made happy by that. And I think I'm rambling. I didn't think this would be a 15-minute talk, but I also did not think it was going to be, where are we? 46 minutes. So I'm going to wrap up this segment. If I created more questions and answers, email me, phil@polarisfinancialplanning. If you want to talk, please, the one thing you should include is your phone number. Do not include any documents. Do not include any year-end statements. Don't include your address. Don't include your social security number or anything like that until we have at least talked. That way you will know for a fact that you sent the email to me and not to a wrong address. I don't want you to send a statement and accidentally type in something wrong and who knows where the fuck your information just went. So send me some general information about you. That's fine, but include your name, of course. Include your phone number, and I can call you or we can schedule something and talk about it. And like I said, if it's just a 20 or 30-minute discussion where you ask a few questions, that's great. If you want to have a longer conversation, and particularly, of course, in my own self-interest, if you have $2 million or more of assets that can be managed or assets that can be put under management, that'd be great. That'd be great. I can always make a little bit more money for large accounts. I'm wrapping up. I promise. We're going to go on with the rest of the show.
You're listening to The Bill Ferguson Show.
I like reading the Bible. I was reading the Bible, found out Jesus had a little brother. Anybody know his name? James. When I read that, I was like, how much pressure was that? Jesus, your big brother? How many times did you have to hear, why come you can't be more like Jesus, James? Because you know, everybody probably thought that James could do the same thing Jesus could do, but he couldn't. He was just James. He wasn't James Christ. Remember the wedding banquet? Jesus turned water into wine. Everybody was amazed, but they don't tell you about the next banquet. Jesus left early. They started running out of wine. Everybody looked at James. It's like, man, last time this happened, your brother made some wine, dude. You just gonna stand there with your sandals on? You're not gonna... Can you make some Kool-Aid or something, man? You're not gonna do anything? And you know James had problems just like any other kid had problems. He'd try to follow his big brother around. So everywhere Jesus went, James followed him. That's what little brothers do. So if Jesus went there, so did James. I bet one time, James almost drowned. Oh, you just got that joke just now, didn't you? Jesus walked on water and James tried to introduce me. I'm sure James had problems. He would go to his parents with his problems. And his parents, especially his mom, was trying to throw him a bone once in a while. They'd pray over their food. They're like, Lord, we just thank you for this food. In James' name. James had problems. He would go to his parents with his problems, and you know what they would say? He'd be like, well, what would Jesus do, you know? Then they gave him a bracelet. And then he started selling those bracelets, you know? Made some money selling bracelets. What would be cool is a what would James do bracelet, right? Same initials, different meaning. Completely different meaning. You driving down the street, you get cut off in traffic. You fuss him out, your pastor gonna be like, yo, you got a what would Jesus do bracelet on? You're like, that's what would James do. Driving an imaginary car for a long time, isn't he? Also found out when Jesus was 12 years old, Mary and Joseph lost Jesus. They lost Jesus. And you know the first thing they had to do was pray. I wonder what that prayer must have sounded like. Joseph probably did the prayer. He was like, oh, God. Dear God, oh, forgiving God. You remember that Messiah you gave us? You got another one somewhere, man? We don't. That was the only begotten son? Okay, we're going to find him. We're going to find him.
Thank you again for listening to the Phil Ferguson Show. I greatly appreciate it. This is me. I'm Phil Ferguson. I do appreciate you being here and listening to the show. You can help me out a little bit by sharing the show, telling others to listen, or giving a 5-star review somewhere. The only two places I know of are iTunes or Apple Podcast, I think it's called now, and Stitcher is pretty reliable. The show is hosted on Spreaker. You can get it directly there, or any good podcast player can stream it and download the episodes automatically, because I'm really weird and different, and I don't do a show on a regular schedule on a certain date at a certain time, which drives some people nuts, but it's what I do. I fit it in when I can, and I like doing it. I like you listening, and I like helping people. So hopefully somebody out there is being helped by the show. I love hearing about those stories. Also, I'm going to put out a call if you have never interviewed on a podcast or a blog or anything before, and you are somebody that has left religion. I would like to consider sharing your story. So send me an email, phil@polarisfinancialplanning.com. We can have a quick talk. Then we could possibly move forward and schedule an interview maybe for 15 minutes where we go over your background and what happened in religion, whether it was nice or not nice, and then kind of what caused or helped you to escape the bounds of religion. I'm always fascinated by those stories, so that's a regular feature. The other thing, of course, is church money. If you happen to see a statement, particularly if you're forced to go vote in a church, if they have the statements or the documents on the table, grab one of those. And other things, of course, whatever. Let me know if you want me to talk about something. If you have questions created by the show, let me know. If you have a topic you want me to go over and you've not heard me talk about, or it's been 5 years since I've talked about something, that's awesome. Again, of course, the email, phil@polarisfinancialplanning.com. And of course, last but not least, if you have at least $2 million of assets that can be managed, you can contact me and we can have a discussion about whether you should hire me or not, and we can proceed down that path if that's something that interests you. Otherwise, I'm going to wrap it up. January 15th, I'll be talking here in Central Florida. Look that up. That's enough. That's enough for now. I do hope to see you in person at some point in the future. Until then, ciao.
back on my feet. Got knocked down, rose above it. Went the distance, I don't take no defeat. I will thrive, I will not just survive.
Listen, before I was a Christian, something was missing. Felt a little distant, dark, resistant. Made a decision, got a new vision. Wrote my goals, yeah, wrote my mission. BC, I was aimlessly walking. Then one day I heard the voice of God talking. Rise up, child, to the enemy mocking. Prayer is your weapon, pray without stopping.
Eye of the tiger is the thrill of the fight. Rising up to the challenge of our rival. With the heart of a lion and the armor of God, you will conquer it all with the eye of the tiger. Face to face with Satan himself. Don't budge an inch, he'll take miles. He'll find your weakness, he will hit where it hurts. Stand your ground, make him run for the hills. It's the eye of the tiger, it's the thrill of the fight. Rising up to the challenge of our rival. If you cast all your cares on him and pray through the night, you will conquer it all with the eye of the tiger. Rising up, straight to the top. Fight for Christ, give him glory. Go the distance, don't retreat, never stop. For the Lord always wins in the end. It's the eye of the tiger, it's the thrill of the fight. Rising up to the challenge of our rival. With the heart of a lion and the armor of God, you will conquer it all with the eye of the tiger.
Keep your eyes on God and your heart in the Word. Be a leader in Christ, don't follow with the herd.
The eye of the tiger.
Always walk by faith, never walk by sight. With the armor of God, you'll never lose the fight.
The eye of the tiger.